Your four favorites are 5 centimeters per second, Outrage, The Social Network, and Kids Return. Obviously, you're a Takeshi Kitano fan, and I told myself I wasn't going to recommend any of his movies because clearly you've seen a lot of them. But I just watched Kikujiro and I noticed you didn't have it marked as watched. And it's so different from Outrage and Kids Return that I think it's worth checking out as a fan of his work. Peppermint Candy, like 5 centimeters per second, uses its narrative structure to explore how the passage of time shapes a person's life. Like Outrage, it depicts the dark consequences of violence and betrayal. Like The Social Network, it examines ambition, legacy, and reputation. And like Kids Return, it reflects on youth, memory, loss of innocence, and how past decisions alter the trajectory of someone's life. You used the word melancholic in more than one review, and you mentioned Andrew Garfield's performance in your log for The Social Network. And 5 centimeters per second and Kids Return explore these ideas of time passing, adulthood, and the different roads life can take us down. And there's an element of crime and violence in Outrage and Kids Return. So with all those ideas in mind, I want to recommend a movie with a melancholic tone that, like Kids Return, explores how a couple of friends got in trouble when they were younger and the different directions their lives went in as they became adults. And it involves crime like Outrage, and like The Social Network, has a stellar performance from Andrew Garfield, and that movie's Boy A. A Brighter Summer Day is a coming-of-age film like Kids Return, and it has that melancholic, nostalgic tone about memory, youth, and the passage of time like 5 centimeters per second. It involves criminal activity and violence like Outrage, and like The Social Network, it's about identity and ambition. Millennium Mambo has that melancholic, nostalgic tone with a lot of visual storytelling where not everything is explained with dialogue like you described in your review for 5 centimeters per second. There's a crime element to the story, although it's much more subtle compared to Outrage. Like The Social Network, it's got stylized visuals with great editing and music, and like Kids Return, it captures that feeling of reflecting back on your youth and that aimless, drifting feeling. City of God explores the passage of time like 5 centimeters per second. It's about organized crime like Outrage. Like The Social Network, it's about ambition. And like Kids Return, it's a coming-of-age film that depicts a couple young men choosing different life paths. Look Back is an anime film like 5 centimeters per second. And in your Letterboxd log for 5 centimeters per second, you said you liked how the story was broken up into 3 parts through time, how the film was short but full of impact, and you praised the gorgeous art. And this film is literally about art. It's short but very impactful, and it may not be broken up into 3 separate parts, but it feels like it has distinct chapters, and it definitely chronicles the passage of time. Also, it's a coming-of-age film like Kids Return, and you praised the score for The Social Network, and this movie also has an incredible score. Speaking of coming-of-age films with beautiful scores that feel divided into different chapters, the combination of 5 centimeters per second and Kids Return makes me think you'd like Monster. When I read what you said about the story being broken up into 3 parts through time about 5 centimeters per second, I started thinking of movies that play around with structure, not necessarily ones divided into 3 separate parts. And you also said you loved how in 5 centimeters per second there's this exploration of how factors like distance, time, and adulthood influence the concept of love. So those 2 ideas made me want to recommend Asako 1 and 2 because the way it shows the passage of time almost feels like the story is divided into chapters, and this movie explores how certain factors influence love. Another film that came to mind for its structure was Spring, Summer, Fall, Winter, and Spring, which I also think you'd like because it's a visually stunning meditation on life and the passage of time. Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters came to mind for similar reasons. And this one is a biographical film about ambition, ego, and legacy like The Social Network, but it also involves violence like Outrage. Ash's Purest White, like 5 centimeters per second, has the story broken up into 3 parts to show the passage of time, and it explores how time and distance change people in their relationships. Like Outrage, it's about crime, loyalty, and betrayal. Like The Social Network, it's about ambition and power dynamics. And like Kids Return, it examines how the decisions people make when they're younger have long-term effects and shape their future. Millennium Actress is an anime film like 5 centimeters per second, and it has that nostalgic atmosphere where it reflects on love, memory, time, and people's lives intersecting. Since you like Outrage, I think you might like Infernal Affairs because it's got that violent, gritty vibe, and like you said in your Letterboxd log for Outrage, there's not a single dull moment, and there are a lot of characters, but it's easy to follow. Another gritty crime film I think you'd like since you like Outrage that also has a great score like The Social Network is Thief. My go-to recommendation for fans of The Social Network is Steve Jobs, which was also written by Aaron Sorkin, and you didn't have this one marked as watched. watched. Blackberry also depicts the rise of a tech empire with great pacing, editing, and music. And Moneyball is another biographical drama you might like since you like The Social Network, because it also involves ambition, innovation, and smart, fast-paced storytelling. The first movie that came to mind when I watched Kids Return was Blue Spring. They're both Japanese coming-of-age films about male friendships, juvenile delinquency, ennui, and the uncertainty of growing up. All About Lily Shushu also has a similar vibe in its depiction of adolescence, and it's very poetic in a way that I think a fan of 5 centimeters per second would also appreciate. And this one isn't Japanese, but I feel like Rebels of the Neon God also has a similar vibe with that youthful alienation, loneliness, and existentialism.